You've met them before, the colleague who always does exactly what's required, nothing more, nothing less. They never cause trouble, never go above and beyond, and somehow feel both reliable and strangely absent at the same time. What looks like bare minimum on the surface is often a precise psychological strategy, built from how the brain saves energy, how personality is wired, and how people quietly protest situations they don't feel safe investing in. Bare minimum behavior shows up everywhere, at work, in relationships, even in how people treat their own health and ambitions. It's the pattern of doing just enough to avoid consequences, but never enough to signal full engagement. And right now, with quiet quitting and burnout on the rise, this pattern is becoming the new emotional baseline for many people. Effort minimization research suggests our brains are naturally biased toward conserving physical and mental energy, especially when extra effort doesn't feel fairly rewarded. But some people turn that conservation into a way of being. It becomes part of their identity, their relationships, their work style. By the end of this video, you'll be able to decode when bare minimum is built into someone's wiring, when it's a sign of burnout, and when it's actually a quiet form of protest. Humans are not wired to maximize effort. We're wired to minimize it whenever we can get away with it. The theory of effort minimization in physical activity shows that people have an automatic tendency to choose the least effortful option available. And this drive is so constant that researchers describe it as a permanent feature of how we move and act. This isn't just about exercise. If a task feels pointless, unrewarded, or disconnected from any meaningful outcome, the brain quietly starts asking, what is the smallest amount of energy I can spend while still staying safe? That's where bare minimum behavior often begins, not as laziness, but as an energy-saving algorithm for situations that don't feel worth the cost. What looks like not caring is often the nervous system trying to protect energy in a situation it has already judged as low return. If everyone's brain prefers less effort, why doesn't everyone behave like a bare minimum person? Personality research helps explain why some people lean into the bare minimum far more than others. In the Big Five model, people lower in conscientiousness tend to value flexibility over structure, spontaneity over long-term planning, and comfort over meticulous follow-through. They're not doomed to fail. In many environments, they're quick, adaptable, and creative, but repetitive, detail-heavy effort feels draining and unnecessary. So, they do what keeps them out of trouble and stop there. Most people assume bare minimum equals doesn't care. But for some low conscientiousness personalities, it actually means I care enough to meet the standard, but not enough to redesign my entire lifestyle around it. If someone has always been this way, in school, in work, in chores, you're likely seeing temperament, not a recent moral collapse. But what about the people who used to over-deliver and then slid into bare minimum later? Burnout changes the meaning of the bare minimum. Instead of being about comfort, it becomes about survival. Research on burnout and effort-reward imbalance shows that when people pour in a lot of effort and receive little reward, whether that's money, respect, or basic stability, their stress spikes and their sense of control drops. In that state, the nervous system starts rationing energy. Emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced accomplishment push people to do only what protects their job or relationship in the short term. The quiet quitting scale captures this. High scores mean employees still show up and do what's required, but withdraw extra effort and psychological investment. Most people miss this moment. What many label as entitled or lazy is often a late-stage defense, and they think to themselves, I can't keep giving at this level without breaking, so I'll give just enough to not blow up my life. If someone used to go above and beyond and now only does the minimum, the story is rarely about motivation. It's about accumulated damage. Context quietly trains people into bare minimum mode. In workplaces where extra effort doesn't change anything, no recognition, no advancement, no protection from layoffs, minimizing effort becomes a rational calculation. not a character flaw. Articles on bare minimum coworkers often frame them as the problem, but high effort, low reward environments predict exactly this pattern. High stress, high turnover and tension, and a pull toward doing only what's specified in the job description. Sometimes the bare minimum person is not the weakest link. They're the most honest mirror of a system that has made extra effort feel pointless. Others eventually calibrate to them because, on a deep level, it looks safer. If the environment punishes initiative through overloading, blaming, or ignoring it, then the bare minimum becomes the only strategy that feels sane. So, where does personal responsibility end and psychological self-protection begin? Over time, some people stop seeing the bare minimum as a temporary coping strategy and start seeing it as who they are. I'm low maintenance, I don't need much, I just keep my head down. Underneath those phrases, there's often a history, times when trying harder led to rejection, exploitation, or disappointment. So they quietly rewrote the rule to never care more than the situation cares about you. In relationships, this shows up as responsiveness without initiative, answering texts but rarely starting them, agreeing to plans but not creating them. Over time, research and clinical writing point out that this can create emotional distance and long-term dissatisfaction, even if no one ever screams or fights. Many bare minimum people aren't trying to hurt anyone. They're trying to avoid emotional debt. If they never invest deeply, they never owe deeply. And they never have to face the shame of, I gave everything, and it still wasn't enough. The cost is subtle, but real. Opportunities, intimacy, and growth tend to go where energy goes, and a life built on minimum effort often quietly stagnates. If you recognize some of this in yourself, the most useful question isn't, why am I lazy? But what exactly am I protecting by staying at the bare minimum here? My energy, my self-worth, or my sense of fairness? Burnout calls for recovery and boundaries. Low conscientiousness calls for better structure and external supports. Unfair environments call for renegotiation or exit, not self-blame. When you see bare minimum patterns in others, a more precise interpretation is, this person is optimizing for something. Safety, autonomy, freedom from disappointment, or simply not feeling used. You still get to set standards and boundaries, but understanding the underlying driver gives you better options than just labeling them as unmotivated or toxic. On the other side of this spectrum is the invisible overachiever, the person who quietly overfunctions so others can coast. The psychology of that pattern is just as revealing. Bare minimum behavior is rarely random. It's a map of where effort stopped feeling safe, fair, or meaningful. Now that you can see the wiring, the personality traits, the burnout patterns, and the environmental pressures, notice where you have calibrated yourself to just enough, and whether that calibration still serves the person you're trying to become. In the comments, share one place in your life where you've either slipped into the bare minimum or watched someone else do it, and what you think it was protecting. If you want more high-precision breakdowns of human behavior, subscribe. Next, we'll explore the psychology of the invisible overachiever, the person who quietly carries more than their share so others never have to notice the cost.